document. We used it all the time. A times B equals 0 means A equals 0 or B equals 0. That's the zero product principle. 0 on one side and a product on the other. We just didn't name it all the time. That's what I mean. 0 on one side, a product on the other. This is the zero product principle. Or the principle of zero product, or the zero product principle. Very good. Next question. Anything else you tried? Anything from my math lab, from reading, from anything? What would you like to continue then with? What would you like to continue with? I think we did the rational, but I think we did this. We did completing the square. I remember that. Do we need to show the number 4, the quadratic formula? Yes? Okay, very good. We did not do this one, correct? Okay. So this is x squared plus 13x plus 42 equals 0. Let's say using the quadratic formula. So that would be x equals, and what do I write? Negative 13 plus or minus the square root of?
Negative 13 squared.
Careful. This is always positive no matter what. So if I see something like this, I will not look at the problem, please. Even if it's positive, even if it's negative, we have to square it. So this particular piece, maybe the result under the square root could be, it's possible, it can be negative. But not this first item. That first item must be positive always. But the result under the square root could end up being negative. So regardless of whether this is positive or negative, the first piece must be positive because it's a square quantity. Good. So I'm going to start all over. So x equals negative 13 plus or minus the square root of 169 minus 4 times 1 times c divided by 2a, which is 2. Now let me show you how I would do this in the graphing calculator. Of course, if I don't get an integer or integers, I may have to go back. I may have to go back and determine this and then try to simplify, take the square root and simplify the square root. But otherwise, I will put it all together at once in the graphing calculator with parentheses around the top and with parentheses around the quantity under the square root. And I will determine both solutions at once. So let's do that. Okay, and let me clear this. We're doing something else. Okay, so left parenthesis, negative 13. When we start with a negative number, we have to use this symbol, not the operation negative. So we have to use minus 13 plus the square root. If you need help with this, please raise your hand. I'll come and help you. I prefer putting parentheses again. Your new calculators are way more sophisticated. They may not need parentheses all over the place, but I don't trust anything when it comes to lack of parentheses. Sorry about that. So 169 minus 4 times 42. Close the parenthesis under the square root. I'm going outside of the square root to close the parenthesis for the numerator, and then I divide by 2. Now, if the denominator, it happens to be 2 terms, that I have to put parentheses around the denominator as well. So then I press enter, and I get negative 6. I'm not going to type this in again. I'm going to go to second and entry. It pops up again, and I will go to the left and overwrite positive into a negative by a negative. So I go left. It's easier for you with the calculator. It's more cumbersome here on the computer. So I change into a negative and then I press enter. So I got those two solutions. Now, if I don't get integers, then I have to go back and calculate what it's under the square root and then try to simplify. So if I have, so the two solutions are x equals -6 and x equals -7. But if they happen not to be integers, then I'll have to go back, and if this quantity, let's say, is 18, then I will have to simplify the square root of 18 into the square root of 9 times the square root of 2, which will be 3, the square root of 2. It happened that those two solutions were integers, so we didn't have to do that. But I will still do this first to see what happens. If I get anything that is not an integer, then I'll have to go back.
Where did the 4 come from?
I'm sorry?
Where did the 4 come from? Are you supposed to do multiply by 4?
Okay, so it's -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a.
That's it.
And since a was 1, I didn't put it in.
That's what I did wrong.
Maybe that was confusing because I didn't mention the 1. Any questions on this problem? Any questions? Any questions? Okay, so let's continue then. The area of a rectangular wall, the area is given to us to be 27 square feet. We see, it says that the length is 6 feet longer than the width. So if we denote the width by, what will be the length? Okay, so let's read it again. Its length is 6 feet longer than the width. If we denote the width by x, say it again. That's it. X plus 6 indeed. Find the length and the width of the wall. So what do I have to write? And how do I determine the area of a rectangle? Length times width. So length times width equals the area. So can anyone dictate what we should write? Very good. X times x plus 6 equals 27. What type of equation is it and how do we solve it? Say it again. Of course. Perfect. And then distribute, subtract, and set it equal to 0. Now, we have 4 different methods that we learned. So which method do you think will apply here? Taking square roots? No, it's not set up for taking square roots. Complete the square? Absolutely not. So I'm looking at or. That's it. If it takes too long, I'll use the quadratic formula. If it's quick and I can factor, I will always factor. Can we factor? Very good. So then x equals and x equals. This is the zero product principle. So -9 feet, I will cross it out. It's correct algebraically, but it means nothing in the context of the problem. And this is 3 feet, which is what we want. And then the length, which is x plus 6, must be. Always remember to write the measurement unit. Any questions? Ready for the next one? If at any point in time you think that we should do more problems of a particular type, always stop me and say I need another of this type, of that type, okay? Okay, so we have x cubed plus 3x squared equals 81x plus 243. What type of equation is this? Say it again. Yes, polynomial. Very good. It's a polynomial equation. Degree. I make myself a note. What is the note all about? Very good. Like my grandma used to say, if I torture you enough, you'll remember. So I think I tortured you enough with this one. Okay, so now what do I do? Yes, I have to have 0 on one side. So this is x cubed plus 3x squared minus 81x minus 243. When we move a term from one side to the other, we have to change the sign. And now I'm looking at how many terms? How many terms? 4. What do we do with 4 terms? Thank you. From the first 2, what would you factor out? Very good. What is left in parentheses? Awesome. What do I have to get from the other 2? Otherwise, I can't continue. Only then I look, because I may mess it up. If I look and I try to figure out without writing this x plus 3 first, who knows what I can come up with. It's possible. And then? Good. Let's check. Negative 81 times x is negative 81x. Negative 81 times 3 is negative 243. Now the common factor comes out, which is awesome. And then what is left in parentheses? Very good. What do we do with x squared minus 81? Very good. We are using the zero product principle now. That's it.
And we can write it that way on the test.
That's more than enough. Any questions? Any questions? Are we okay with this? Are we okay with this? Okay. The square root of x plus 13 equals x minus 7. What type of equation is this? Yes, it's a radical equation. Very good. It can be square root or cube root. It's a radical equation. Awesome. What do we do in this case? Yes, but remember we square the left-hand side as 1 unit and we square the right-hand side as 1 unit. Do not try to square term by term. That would be incorrect. Okay, the left-hand side is, and the right-hand side is?
X minus 7. Wait, no.
X squared
X minus 13x.
X squared minus 14x, perfect.
plus 49.
Plus 49. Awesome. Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. I'm very happy to hear this. Because you're not wasting your time by foiling it. So it's a huge leap forward, not a step forward. Huge leap forward. Okay, good. Thank you. So then, what type of equation is this now? It changed from a radical into something else after we squared. Quadratic. So I have to move x and I have to move 13. So I have x squared minus 15x plus 36 equals 0. It doesn't matter where you put the 0. You can put it on this side or on this side. It doesn't matter. But I prefer keeping x squared to be positive, so that's why I moved x here and 13 here. Good. Now again, we have 4 methods. We have to choose one. The easiest, yes, the easiest in this case. Very good. Very good. So we get 2 options. 12 and, what does this mean? Yes. If I don't go back to check in the original problem, then they may or may not work. So remember, this is not the original problem. If you plug them in here with a square, they will all work, always. So this is not where we want to go back to. We want to go back to this. That's where we plug in 12 and 3 respectively. So let's plug in 12 first, everywhere. So 12 plus 13 is, yes, 25. The square root of 25 is, so the left-hand side is 5, the right-hand side is 5. Would you accept 12?
Yes.
Good. Now let's try 3. So 3 here and 3 here. The left-hand side is 3 plus 13, which is, the square root of 16 is, very good. Now the right-hand side is 3 minus 7, which is this acceptable?
No.
So the only option is 12. Any questions? Any questions? As I said, if there is anything that from here that you need more problems, we can choose more, okay? We move on? Yes? Okay. So the next one is x to the 4th minus 5x squared plus 4 equals 0. I have to ask myself what type of equation this is. And it's a polynomial, very good. Furthermore, it's in form. But I have to make myself a big note just in case. Who knows, I may forget. What is the note? How many? Very good. 4 solutions, so I don't forget. That's my note, the note to myself. Okay, so since it's quadratic in form, what do I do? Yes, I'm going to say, let's say y. What do you want y to be? Yes, you cannot choose anything else. This must be the variable you replace. The x squared by whatever letter you want. It doesn't matter. But only if this happens to be y squared. If this is not y squared, then the equation is not quadratic in form. In other words, I cannot use this method. So when I square this, do I get this? Yes, awesome, good. So now can anyone dictate the new equation?
Y squared minus 5x plus 4.
Very good. Again, we have 4 methods because it's quadratic now, and we have to choose the easiest method. What is the easiest method here? Correct. And what do we get? Very good.
One.
Y minus 1, y minus 4. And then we have 2 options for y. But no one cares about y. We do. The answer must be in x. So this is a new equation and this is another equation. What is this? Good. So it's x squared equals 1, x squared equals 4. From the first one, what do we get? That's why I wrote myself a note. Correct. We take the square root plus or minus 1. And from this one? That's why I made myself this note, because I may forget. Is this clear, everyone?
Yeah. Can we do another one?
Like this one?
Mhm.
Sure. So let's choose. They are in 1.6 at other types of equations. There are several types. If we want an identical one is one. If we want something else, we can pick something else.
Can I do one similar?
Yes. So let's try 43 on page 185. Um, 9 x to the 4th equals 25x squared minus 16. What kind of equation? You can say 2 different things about it, but both are important. What type of equation is it? It's polynomial. It's also quadratic in form. I have to make myself a note so I don't forget. What am I looking for? Okay, good. What will be the first step? Yes. 9x to the fourth minus 25x squared plus 16 equals 0. Very good. Move everything to one side, have 0 on the other. Perfect. Then? Good. Awesome. If we denote x squared by t, we can only if this is, yes, if it's not t squared, we cannot proceed with this method.
How do we know it's t squared?
Because x squared squared, copy the base, multiply the exponents, you get x to the fourth.
Oh, okay.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Good. So, what is the equation now? Very good. Good. So this is a trinomial. It's in descending order. Greatest common factor? No. Negative leading coefficient? No. Special product? Is this a special product? Is this a perfect square? Okay, so this is 3t, right? Is this a perfect square? Okay. So this is minus. So I'm hoping for this. I don't know. I haven't checked. But I'm hoping for this. I don't know if it's going to work, but I have to try before I do anything else. So what will be the middle term of this expansion? First day of classes last 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. 2 times 3t times 4. 2 times the first times the second. So this is 6 times 4 is 24t. That's not what I have here. So this route is not good. My only chance then, I shouldn't say only, I could factor if it's factorable, but I'd rather not because it's a long procedure. So I'm going to use, I'm going to use the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac. So 36 times 16 over 18. So negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times 9, 36 times c over 2 times a. I will put everything in the graphing calculator, the whole thing, like we just did. Okay, so you don't have to do this. I'm doing it because I'm lazy. So it was 25. Plus the square root of 625 minus 36 times 16. I close the parenthesis. I close the parenthesis outside, and I divide by 18. So 25 plus or minus 625, yes, minus 36 times 18. Okay. So if I go to math and I want this to be a fraction, let's see what I get. 16 divided by 9. That's nice. So t equals 16 divided by 9. So now I will go back. Let's see if it does it for me. It may not. Oh, awesome. Okay, so I go back and override the positive into a negative. Let's see what I get. And I got 1. That's even nicer. I love that. So I get 2 options for t. First option was 16 over 9, and the second option was 1. So now we have two equations. Can anyone give us this equation and then somebody this equation? Which equation is this? T equals 16 over 9.
X squared
Perfect.
equals 16.
Awesome. And the other one?
X squared equals 1.
That's it. That's all I needed. So how do I solve these two? And the most appropriate method, you can factor, you can do other things, but the most appropriate method is taking square roots here. That's the easiest and the shortest. So then x equals and x equals. From the first one, ah, I agree with that. Good. And the last one? That's why I write, because I will forget, or I may forget. Is this better? Yes? Okay. Moving on. Yes? Okay. So number 9. Number 9 is x minus 10 over 4 greater than or equal to x minus 5 over 6 plus 1 over 12. I lost track of my count here. What was it? Great. What is this? It cannot be a rational inequality because it doesn't have x in the denominator. We don't know how to solve rational inequalities yet. We're not there yet. So it can only be absolute value or linear. We don't know anything else about inequalities. Compound if you want, but that's all we know. Linear, compound, and absolute value. What is it? Perfect. What are we trying to do first, do you think? Yes, what is the LCD? Very good. So here's what I recommend. 12 over 1, 12 over 1, 12 over 1. I'm hoping that I can get you into the habit of simplifying before you multiply. That's the key. Because you may make errors. We all make errors, but it's better to simplify before you multiply. Here's how I do this. 4 divided by 4, 12 divided by 4. 6 divided by 6, 12 divided by 6. 12 divided by 12, 12 divided by 12. So do not distribute and then try to simplify. It's more difficult than if you simplify first and then multiply. Okay, so what do I write next? Perfect. Greater than or equal to?
2x minus 10
Very good.
plus 1.
Very good. Do we all agree with this? Everyone? Yes? Okay, I will combine like terms. 3x minus 30 greater than or equal to 2x minus 9. And then it's, I think, a good habit, again, to move terms around and not have to write so much. So when I move 2x from the right to the left, it becomes negative. So 3x minus 2x will be good. When I have negative 30 and it goes to the other side, it becomes positive 30 minus 9, 21. So now I see what this is, and I write the interval notation.
Bracket 21, comma, positive.
Very good. Thank you very much. Can we move on? Do we want other problems? Any questions here? Anything? Okay. So the absolute value of 4x plus 8 divided by 5 is less than 4. What type of inequality is this? Yes. Good. So now I remember that the absolute value inequalities are of two types. One, right? And the other one. Which one is this? Yep. Let's read it. Let's read it. Blah, blah, blah in absolute value less than 4. Is it this or is it this? Yes. It's the smallest, right? The in between. So how do I write this? Because if I don't rewrite it, I don't know how to solve it. I can't do anything. So what does this change into? No, the absolute value is gone. Negative 4 less than.
4x plus 8 will be 5, also less than 4.
That's it. Now this is gone. We replaced it by something else that we know how to solve. And this is what we know how to solve. Very good. Thank you for your help. Very good. So now what do I do? How do I get rid of and what do I get rid of?
Multiply inside by 5.
Exactly. Multiply everything by 5 or 5 over 1. So negative 20 less than 4x plus 8 less than 20. Then subtract 8 from all three sides. Negative 28 less than 4x less than 12. So we subtracted 8 from all three sides. Perfect. Then divide everything by 4. Let me go to the next page, because when I scan it disappears, or it can disappear. So divide everything by 4. So this is negative 7 less than x less than 3. And this is final. I just need to write the interval notation. X in that's it. Awesome. Questions? Questions on this? Okay, next one. 2x plus 2 divided by 3 greater than to 4. We have to read it carefully, and when we finish reading it, we know which territory to look at. Exactly. Because once I read it, I say blah, blah, blah in absolute value greater than or equal to 4. Further away from 0. Greater than or equal to 4. So I know that this cannot be presented in a chain. So here I have to separate. And I also make myself a note. Don't forget to use the union. If you don't use the union, something is wrong. Like I made myself a few minutes ago, I made myself this note. Please remember, this equation has to have 4 solutions. Same way, I put that union somewhere, so I don't forget what I have to write eventually. So what are the inequalities then? Yes? Perfect.
Greater than equal to negative 4. Less than equal to
Perfect. Right? In other words, greater than 4 or less than negative 4. Good. So now this is gone. It was replaced by these two. We don't know how to solve it. We cannot touch the absolute value. The absolute value inequality, this one changes into these two. How do I solve the first one? Very good. So 2x plus 2 greater than or equal to 12. Subtract 2, 2x greater than or equal to 10. So we found the first branch. So we multiply both sides by 3, we got 12. We subtracted 2 and we divided by 5. Agreed? Okay, so then I have to solve this one. So 2x plus 2 less than or equal to negative 12. Same procedure, multiply both sides by 3. and then subtract 2, which is negative 14, and divide by 2, which is negative 7. When I write the union, I have to put the set from the left first and the set to the right second. So what will be the first one? Negative infinity, comma, very good, with a bracket, perfect. And the other one? 5, comma, infinity. And I did not forget to use the union for this one. Questions? Any questions here? Moving on. Okay, so here we have y equals the square root of x plus 12. Now if we don't want to, but if we wanted to graph this function, we remember what is the base function used here. Which one? The square root. This is the square root of x, right? The square root of x. What transformation is this from the square root of x to the square root of x plus 12?
Horizontal shift to the left, 12 units.
12 units. So I already have a picture in my head of this function or of this graph. Is this a function? Of course. Here's how we write it. Write the answer. We don't have to graph. I will say when x is 0, I get y equals the square root of 12. When x is negative 3, I get y equals the square root of 9. And I can continue forever. In other words, for each x, I find only one y. Therefore, it's a function. I don't find two different y values, right? So I'm going to write for each x, we get a value of y. Maybe we get only, to make sure that this is clear, only one value of y. Therefore, function. That's all we need to write. For each x, I will only get one y value. Therefore, it must be a function. Okay, number 13. Is this a function or not? No. But just writing no is not good enough. No, it's not by the vertical line test. Next. If you remember on the test paper, you don't have to write anything here. Everything will be on your scratch paper. You can look and see if there is a hint for you or something that triggers your memory. You should always look and read. But you don't have to go back and fill it in with anything. Okay? Because I don't look at it. Okay. So we're asked to look at the graph of the function. Look at the graph of the function and answer some questions. Okay. What is the function domain? Yes. Do you all agree with the bracket 0 to 4 with a parenthesis for the domain? Oh, you cannot see what I wrote. Sorry. Right? So the domain is between 0 and 4, correct? Okay. What about the function range? Negative 9 to 7. Do we all agree? So we write negative 9 to 7, 7 with a parenthesis, and negative 9 with a bracket. I'll show you. X-intercepts. Yes. So I will write it as 3, 0. So 3, 0 is the x-intercept. 5, 6, 7. Yes. Never. That is a parenthesis. No. Yeah, the bracket is always when the point is full. If the point is empty, is parenthesis. That's why we call this a closed, and we call this an open. Yeah. My pleasure. Okay. So then the y-intercept. 0, negative 9. 0, comma, negative 9. The function value indicated below, which is f of 1. How do I determine that? What is given in the question in f of 1? X is given, so I have to draw a vertical line. I see it crosses the graph of the function in this point, and I will be able to read the y value. And I think it appears to be negative 8. That's how I see it. I just put my marker in there, now I can't read it anymore. Any questions? Is this okay? Very good, moving on. Open intervals on which the function is increasing, decreasing, constant. What would you say about increasing? None. Very good. What about decreasing? So between negative infinity and 0, all this territory, from negative infinity to 0, the function is decreasing. So I will write from negative infinity to 0. This is for part B. What will you write for part C? Yes, for part C, I will write 0 to infinity. And there is no need to look at any of this. Any questions on 15?
So if
Yes?
the test is given in this format where there's like blank spaces, we just ignore those?
Completely ignore everything. And you can choose the order of the problems. You don't have to do them in the order they are presented. But you will have to show all your work for, on scratch paper. That's what I'm going to grade. But you should read everything, because the reason why I decided in the last 2 semesters to do this is because students working in my math lab, they're kind of, something triggers their memory, I'm assuming, at some point in time. So when you see a problem like this, you will remember something. And if that helps you, why not? Okay? Good. So the next problem. The graph of a function is given. Use the graph to answer the questions. So for this question, as you see, we are asked to find the numbers where there is a maximum. So this is the number where there is a maximum. How much is the maximum is value 3, which is the value of the function. Where the maximum is at negative 3. How much is it is 3. So that's the answer for part A. The number at which the function has a relative max is x equals negative 3. The number at which the function has a relative max is negative 3. The relative max is positive 3. Same question for relative min. So I see this function has 2 relative min. They happen to be at the same altitude. It happens that they are both negative 1. But I'm first asked to determine where. Okay, at negative 4 and at negative 2, the function has 2 relative min, but they happen to have the same y value, negative 1. So I will say at x equals negative 4 and x equals negative 2, the function has 2 relative min, and the value of the relative min is negative 1.
Do you want us to evaluate? Do you want us to write the relative min and relative max with like how much it is, the number that the max is?
Yeah, so let me just put it in writing and how the answer should be. It's a very good question. Thank you.
Okay.
So I will say this. The function has a relative max at x equals negative 3, full stop. The relative max is 3. That's part A. Oh, sorry. So the function has a relative max at x equals negative 3. The relative max is 3. The function has a relative min at x equals negative 4 and x equals negative 2. the relative min are the same, comma, -1. This is how I would answer the question. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Any questions here?
Thank you.
My pleasure. So what about this? We're asked to see, by simply looking at the graph, we're asked to identify or decide whether it's odd, even, or none of the above.
So it's even.
It's even because I see all points are the same. -3, 3, 3, 3. -1, 0, 1, 0. So I will say it's an even function. Symmetric with respect to the y-axis. Okay, here's the next one. We are given g of x, which is x squared minus 3x. The problem is asking us whether this is a symmetric function, odd, even, or not symmetric at all. So here's what I would do. Number one, I will find the g of -x. In number two, I will find negative g of x. And in number three, I will decide. How do I determine g of -x? What do I have to write? So -x squared minus 3 times -x. Perfect. Now I have to decide what is -x squared. What does it equal to?
X squared.
Perfect. How much is -3 times -x? Very good. Leave it alone. Perfect so far. Now I would like to find negative g of x by multiplying both sides by -1. If I multiply this side by -1, what do I get on the other? Perfect? Good. Okay, now I'm making a decision. First question I have is this. Does this equal this?
No.
No. So I will write g of -x does not equal g of x. Not even. Second question. Is this the same with this? No. So g of -x does not equal the opposite g of x, which means not odd. Therefore, what is our conclusion? Not symmetric. That's it. Very good. Good.
Another question.
Yes?
What was 17? I didn't catch it. Is it 80?
And not symmetric.
There's only
For
17.
17, the one that like sort of W shape.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. So this is, it's even because it's completely symmetric. All points are symmetric with respect to the y-axis.
Okay.
So that is even. I know the difference between 17 and 18 for some reason. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, first question, domain. Do we agree with all your numbers? Yes? Good. Range, please. So -4 to infinity. -4 to infinity. Please write the range, -4 to infinity. X-intercepts. Yes, I see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 7. 3 and 7, x-intercepts. Y-intercept,
21.
0, 21, right here. Y-intercept is right here, 0, 21. Intervals on which the function is increasing.
5, positive.
Yes, from 5 to infinity. For any x value between 5 and infinity, the function is increasing. We don't care from which value to which value. We only care about the trend. Is this okay, everyone? Intervals on which if f is decreasing. From x equals 0 till x equals 5. So between x equals 0 and x equals 5, the trend is decreasing. Is that okay? And where is the function constant? From negative infinity to 0. Do we all agree with these three? Okay. The number at which f has a relative min. X equals 5. How much is the relative min? Negative 4. So at x equals 5, the value is negative 4. The minimum is when x is 5. How much is the minimum? Is negative 4. Is this okay, everyone? Please stop me if you have questions. Yes, please.
Are we gonna have like a larger graph, like on the test itself?
No, but you can, no. Your perfect question.
Could I like specify like that's either -4 or -5?
Yes.
It's kind of hard to, okay.
Yes, you can say it's hard for me to read, which in real life it can happen a lot. You can say it's hard for me to read. I'm estimating that the minimum is at -4.
Okay, got it.
And the minimum value is, yeah. Very good. Very good question. F of -4. For f of -4, I'm given x or y? X. So I'm given x, so I'm just going to draw a vertical line at -4. It crosses the graph in this point, and I'm going to read the y value, which is 21. Is this function odd, even, or none of the above? Of course, it's not symmetric with respect to the y-axis. It's not symmetric with respect to the origin. Not symmetric. By mistake, I skipped the last one, the one before the last. Find the values of x for which f of x is -3. What is given now? Y is given. So now I draw a horizontal line at -3. I see it crosses the graph in 2 points, and I read the x values now. I think I read 4 and 6. So make sure that you present both values. Questions, please? Questions? Okay, moving on. Now,